What's the business, people? We're going to talk about one of the most frustrating things in starting a lawn care business there is out there. This is probably the number one issue that you're going to run into when you're starting your lawn care business. And thanks to my man Debo, who gave me some constructive criticism on one of my videos and also had a question about how much we should be charging when we're out there cutting yards. I know you guys have done your research also and looked on YouTube. And I tell you what, there's a lot of smart guys out there in lawn care with all these different formulas and all these different ways of pricing yards when they're out there cutting. But let's just do a deep dive like we always do and check out a simple way to price lawn care. Let's go. So in doing my research, I told you there's a lot of smart lawn care guys out there, guys that have been doing it for a while. But again, they're not in the same space and place as the new guy just getting started, right? Not pricing your lawn care properly, even in the beginning, you're going to find yourself in a tough space and place as far as trying to make a profit. It's going to be rough during the first year. That's why I recommend that if you're just starting off in lawn care, you want to start off with about 10 to 15 yards, right? So you can learn the craft. You also want to jump into that second phase of it and find yourself a mentor. Find somebody who is cutting grass, has the grass business established, and just tell them. Don't tell them you want to come work for them. I mean, that's not going to do it. A lot of guys want to cut grass until they start cutting grass. You know what I mean? So tell them you have some skin in the game by telling them, hey, I'm looking to start my own lawn care business. That's going to certify you. They can believe that you're going to show up, right, because you have something to win in it. I also tell them, hey, I need to make a little money while I'm doing this, right? So get your 10 to 15 yards. You also want to get that mentorship going. But let's jump into this video and talk about how I actually price yards when I first started and how I price them now, and see if you can tell what the difference is. A lot of this is, good information that you find on YouTube about, an hourly rate, which is important, but there's ways to break this stuff down to make sure that you don't get caught up in not doing the right thing when it comes to pricing your yards. So let's take a look at the first yard that we're talking about tonight. Now, this first yard is my most recent customer that I acquired through, again, doing the work, you guys. Just doing the work. You're going to get so many referrals, it's going to be ridiculous. So if you're out there and you love lawn care, that's the way you want to get started, is through referrals, not out there knocking doors, hanging flyers, or doing anything crazy like that. So with this first yard, if we take a look at the yard, the front yard is fairly nice size. They wanted it edged. They wanted it cut, of course. And right now, what we need to look at too is this is a lot of people's first time getting their grass cut for the season. You're always going to charge a little extra, and they should understand that because it's the first time. So communication is the key. This particular yard, I was able to get a zero turn into the backyard, which is key. Okay, so if you can't get into a backyard, that automatically ups the price to me $10 to $15, right? Just off top. I don't care where you're at. It's going to take you a lot longer to go back there and push mow. So you got to figure out what your time is worth and how much you actually want to charge on a house like this. So I went to the back, checked out the back, and as you can see, it's a fairly decent sized backyard. You don't have a bunch of trees. There's one big tree stump in the back. We're able to weed eat around that and also get your zero turn around it through the backside there, so you don't have any issues there. As you can tell off to the left hand side here, they also have a dog kennel, which a lot of guys will come and do a yard and they'll just skip over that. Guys, get that knocked out. It's going to take you about 10 to 15 minutes in the beginning. Remember, in the beginning, we're going to be ones that, give the quality work. We're trying to get quantity, but we want to do quality work while we're doing it. Don't skip over little things like that. That makes a big difference to the customer, because I guarantee you, the last guy, he may have done it, but he may have not done it right, or he just skipped over it altogether. So little things like that make a difference. But this is a fairly basic yard that you're going to run into here, at least in the South. First time, you're going to charge a customer like this anywhere from $60 to $65 for the size of the yard. We're not even going to get into square footage. We're worrying about the time that it's going to take us to actually get the job done. Once you knock it out that first time, you're looking anywhere from $50 to $55 in order to get this customer taken care of. So again, don't make this difficult. Don't get into all these different formulas about, well, I got to think about my overhead, how much gas I spent to get here and all this other stuff. Get the work done. Get the work done. This just happened to be on one of my routes, so it did kind of work out for me that way. But once we start factoring in all that extra stuff, that's where the confusion comes in to pricing lawn care. There's not a whole lot of trees in the front or bushes in the front that we got to trim around. So it's really just a straight shoot. Takes you probably about 20 minutes to edge the whole yard. We go all the way around the fence and everything, so it doesn't take long to take care of a house like this. So again, we want to charge that additional fee the first time in order to get the customer taken care and get it to where it's manageable for us the next time we turn around and come to this location. It's good to go. It's not going to take us more than about 45 minutes to an hour to get this job done. So that's why I said it's important that you know up front how much you want to make an hour. That's going to be the biggest key to making sure that you're profitable in your first year. If a customer comes to you and says, hey, that may be a little too much, okay, this is where I kind of agree with the guys that you see on YouTube. Your price is your price. If I want to make $55 an hour, then guess what? That's how much I'm going to charge for this yard when it's all said and done. It's $55 an hour. So let's go. The next size properties we're going to talk about is going to be, again, kind of where you're going to make your bread at, where you're going to make your good money at. And the reason why I say this is because we don't have to worry about unloading the truck, right? We're just going to hit these houses that are like row houses, nice area, decent size yard as far as, how long it'll take you to actually cut it. I decide to push mow yards like this just because it gives it a better look. Again, I'm worried about the quality. For me to unload the zero turn, get into a smaller yard like this, run over something, or leave tracks in the front yard, all that good stuff is really not worth your time and energy. In this location, I actually have 4 houses that I actually cut, so the route density is where that kind of comes into play when you're starting off. Okay, so if we can make sure we're doing quality work by cutting the front yard with the push mow and the sides, you go down the sides, not much there. They do have the flower bed that's in the front yard. That, with that being said, I do take care of that for an extra fee. You're looking at anywhere to make sure the weeds are taken out and things like that, and rock bed behind the flower beds, make sure the weeds aren't growing up out of there. We get us a little bit of weed killer and go ahead and spray it down, but we charge an extra $15 to $20 to do that and to make sure the bed looks nice and that it doesn't grow out of control, as far as make sure we edge it out and all that kind of good stuff too. So you're looking at houses like these taking you anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. So if I'm doing that and I have 4 houses in this location, we're looking at anywhere from an hour, 2 hours to get them done. 4 houses, 30 minutes a piece. Once we get in the process, it may take a little longer, about 15 minutes more if we actually have to hit the flower bed or something like that, that the customer requested. But otherwise, I think that's a good deal if we're charging them, $40 a yard. I'm not spending a whole lot of money on gas. I got the push mow, which you can knock out all of them with a tank of gas. So again, don't stress yourself out. Determine how much you want to make in an hour. In this particular situation, you would be making about $80 an hour if we did it that way. Again, front of the house, down the sides, the houses are close together. There's a little bit in the back. Then they have the driveways. Right across the alleyway, you're going to have 2 more houses that you can, kind of straight shoot down and get them knocked out, again, quickly, without a problem and no issue. So with me, that's how I determine how I deal with those smaller houses that are closer together. Those are going to be really your money makers, for the fact that what tends to happen is in those type of areas that they're going to need lawn care service, especially if they're newer. So they don't have a lawn care guy that they can depend on that's reliable. You want to make sure that your presence is known. Again, get out there and push mow that. Push mow that. They're going to respect that and be willing to work with you on whatever you do. So that's another example of how I priced this particular yard. We're going to move on to the next one. And as we move on, they're going to get a little bit more difficult, a little bit more complex. And you can see why with these pictures here. Let's go. Now you can see what I'm talking about. This house has the dreaded ditch in the front yard, right? We're not going to run a mow down that and get back up. That's going to take you a lot of time. So what we have to do is wind up weed eating that ditch. That's an extra cost, right? Client has stuff in the front yard, whether it's light fixtures or whatever the case may be, bushes and things like that. Now we're going to have to weed around that stuff. Be careful. Make sure we don't break anything. If the customer allows you, we have to pull that stuff up out of the ground. Then on top of that, we got to make sure that we put it back in the right spot and we don't break anything. So these are all added costs. One of the things that people dread when cutting yards, as I found out, is dealing with a ditch, because it's a lot harder to cut, and also for objects in the front yard, whether they're lights or whatever. You don't know how many lights I've hit or ran over accidentally because they want to have it set up right in the corner. Guys, that's a tough one, right? Just don't get involved if you can afford not to with stuff like that. Tell the customer before you even come to the yard, hey, and I know most of them are aware that that is kind of a nuisance. We want to make sure that, we protect their equipment or whatever they have out there, and we protect our equipment rather than their fixtures. So we want to make sure that we, communicate with them and tell them, hey, is it okay that I pull these things out, or can you pull them out of the ground and get them out the way? If not, you kind of have to have that tough conversation about it being a little bit more extra. Again, a lot of these yards are the first cuts of the year, so we're going to charge a little bit more in the beginning when we first get started cutting these yards. We also have to, think about, are we going to be cutting these yards on a weekly basis or on a bi-weekly basis? Most of my yards right now, I cut them on a bi-weekly basis. There are a few that would like to have their yards cut weekly, and I take care of them also. But if you're cutting the yard on a bi-weekly basis, one of the things you got to remember when you're pricing that yard is that, the grass is going to be a little bit taller in 2 weeks than it would be in one. So that's more time and energy. Now, as we turn around to the backyard, this is where, again, it gets a little bit more difficult. You have a lot going on. Now, key thing that we've already talked about was lawn care hazards. We want to make sure we inspect the complete yard, go through the yard. This particular yard just happened to have a cable wire running on the ground that they hadn't come and buried. We don't want to hold that against the customer, but we want to make sure that we're making the customer aware that the line's out there and that we see it out there and, kind of avoid it. The other thing, you got a structure back here, right? So whether it's a shed or whatever the case may be, or again, like a dog kennel or something like that, we want to make sure that we're going around there, completing the job as best we possibly can, but that's an added object that we have to go ahead and weed eat around. Now, again, we're judging this off of time. When you have additional stuff in the backyard, you got to see how long it's going to take you. Now, in a situation like this particular yard, on a normal basis, you probably want to be charging right about $60. It may not be what you want to do, but again, we're worrying about the quality, not necessarily the quantity. That's going to keep you in a good space and place if we're charging them $60 to $65 to cut this yard every 2 weeks. That's how I decided to price this particular yard. And moving forward, you're going to have to learn at your own pace how you're doing this. I'm at about an hour and a half, really. So, that still puts me down right at about, I would say about $50 for that hour, and then the, additional $15 for that half hour on there. So, and that's just going around. Again, once we get used to cutting the yard, once we get, on the zero turn, which we're able to, again, get into the backyard, we were able to get this knocked out fairly quickly. So that's why I chose to price this particular yard at that price. So again, let's go on to the next one, and I'm gonna tell you this one is even more difficult. See what I mean? Not only do we have a ditch, we got fixtures in the front of the house. We have a flower bed that was overgrown in the front of the house where grass had grew up in the front. We also had a fence or a gate side section with a flower bed attached to it. We had a flower bed on the back side of the gate. And we also had a backyard that was really overgrown. There was a car there. There's also a shed in the back. There's also a dog kennel in the back, and they have a long driveway. Guys, the long driveways are almost a key indicator that we need to start thinking about raising the price on this one too. First time cut on something like this, you're probably looking at anywhere from $75 to $80 a cut for that first time. Once you get used to it, once you get accustomed to it, we're probably looking at right around $65, and it's going to take you right at about an hour. You know, I was able to get the zero turn in the back around the shed. I did have to weed eat in the back of the dog kennel and in the dog kennel, but again, right now this time of year we're getting a lot of winter grass and the stuff that you cut and run over and it just won't cut. It just lays down. It's because the grass is weak. It's not because your mow's messed up or anything like that. The wind and the rotation from your blade knocks the grass down because it's not, it's flimsy. It's not that solid. So that's what the issue is there. You may have to cut over it a couple times, but as the summer comes in, gets a little warmer, that grass is going to start to disappear and go away, and you're going to get the grass, regular grass, growing in there. So yard like this, the first time you're looking at anywhere, like I say, 75. If you want to go 80, you can. Normal cut on this one, you're looking at about $65. Gonna take you about an hour. Remember, we got those flower beds in the front. We got objects we have to trim around. So all that factors in. Guys, look, I've been on YouTube looking and researching, and I find out that, there's almost like this hidden secret of how to price a yard, and people are just not willing to tell you what they pay to or what they choose to cut a yard for. And that to me is kind of, it's kind of goofy. We need to be out here trying to help each other level up our lawn care game. So if there's anything I can say to help somebody else out, that's what I do. This particular one, again, we're looking at making a profit in our business. That's why I chose to price this one the way that I did. Let's go to the next one. Now, this particular yard was right across the street from the one we just discussed. This particular yard was a little different. It's one of those ones that we gotta kind of look out for, right? If you can see in the picture, there's actually a fence that runs along the road or the highway there. So there's that issue that we got to deal with. You got to mow all the way to the fence. They have a couple trees, right? And they also have a pretty decent sized backyard, which I am able to get the zero turn into. So with all that being said, it's going to be priced a little different than what you looked at the last house that was right across the street. You don't have the flower beds to worry about, right? So that's one cost that we can take away. But what do have? That fence. We got to mow on the outside of that fence too. Some people may decide to skip that, but again, it's all about the quality and not the quantity right now. And we want to make sure we got the yard looking nice, man. You don't want people driving down the road and saying, hey, that guy didn't cut on the outside of the fence. It's a sign of being lazy. So that's why with this particular yard, you're going to price this one the same way I priced the one across the street, even though it had the extra flower bed and things like that. That additional space is the one that, that's going to drive it up, the cost of cutting the yard up. Again, it's all about our time. We want to make sure we get the customer taken care of. On the back side of this fence, there's almost like an easement there between their yard and the neighbor's yard before the fence. We even went back there and cut that and took care of it. So Again, we want to worry about the quality and not the quantity. This particular yard, we're going to give it the same price. Why? Because of that added space on the outside of the fence that we got to take our time and actually weed eat. We can't go out there and even push mow that or hit it with the zero turn. It's just not effective at all. Plus we have 2 ditches, okay, that we're dealing with. So that's why we're going to price that one. The driveway wasn't too long, you know, it went down the side, but it wasn't too long to where it took us an extended amount of time to weed eat and blow off. There's something else we got to consider. We got to still blow this stuff off, especially on the driveways. That's a whole nother issue that we'll get into in a later video. But let's move on to this next one, which let's just take a look at it. Let's go. Now I'm going to keep it real with you like we always do. We're trying to level up your lawn care game. If you're not aware the added time and energy it takes to cut a corner lot, this is a prime example that you need to be aware of, right? Guys, not every time we go to cut grass or we give a customer a quote are they going to be satisfied with our pricing. The most important thing in this game is your time. We are on a time schedule, right? That's how we make our money. It's not by the yards we cut, and it's not necessarily how many yards we cut. It's about the quality of the work and the time it takes it to get it to where we're satisfied with it. This particular yard, as you see, has the corner lot appeal to it. When you're cutting a corner lot, man, it's going to take you literally probably twice the amount of time that it would if it didn't have itself on a corner. And the reason, you got to get on the outside. This particular home has a pretty large section on the outside and it curves around towards the front. There's flower beds there that we have to weed eat around, give them the quality. We also got an edge around all that, so that's why it doubles up your time. Now let's take a look at the backyard. The backyard, you're gonna find stuff, especially if there's kids in the home. You're gonna find toys, you're gonna find a trampoline that grass grows under, and we can decide to take the time and just mow around it, or we can take the time and move the trampoline by yourself, weed eat or run the mow over it, under it, move it back. Sometimes those things are staked in the ground. Just the fact that you have a trampoline in the back is a nuisance in itself. Never mind the size of the yard that we're looking at. Big house, big yard. This particular house, you're going to quote this house anywhere from $100 to $150 to cut it. That is, you're by yourself, right? And if you're out there getting it by yourself, you got to understand, again, it's about your time. Some people may say that's high. Guess what? The customer said that was high too. Hey, I'm not concerned, not worried. We just got to, give them our price. Let them decide. Hey, don't spend out of your own pockets. That's one key that we got to keep in mind. Do not spend out of your own pockets. And what I mean by that is don't go to a customer and give them customers a quote thinking what you would pay to do it. Give them the price that is your price. How long it's going to take you to get that done. A house like this, even after the first time, you're probably looking at about a 2-hour job. So again, that's why I say, if we're trying to make about $60 to $65 an hour, you're looking at $125 on up for something like this on a consistent basis. Yeah, we got to focus. All these yards that we're looking at, we got to understand that the grass is not growing at the rate it's going to be growing in a couple months. Right? In a couple months, this stuff is going to be growing like wildfire, especially here where it rains just about every evening, normal showers. So give them the price. Let them know this is how I price it and the reason why I price it that way. And guess what? This customer got that quote from me about 3 weeks ago. I just passed by my customer's house that I actually cut. That's just a few houses down, and the yard is still not cut. guess what? The price is going up. Don't call me next week and say, hey, I want to go ahead and get that quote that you talked about. Oh man, hold up. We got to get a better understanding. This is grass we're talking about that hasn't been cut this year yet. So imagine if you see what it's like now. Imagine what it was like when I went to it, rather. Imagine what it's like now. So again, guys, focus on making sure you're getting customer quality work. You're making the amount of money an hour that you want to make when you're doing this. This is all about leveling up your lawn care game. And if that's something you're interested in, I need you to go ahead and subscribe and watch this video right here. Appreciate you. Let's go.